in the bustling streets of 5th century BCE Athens, a city hailed as the cradle of democracy and the heart of intellectual progress. One name lingered on the lips of philosophers, politicians, and playwrights alike: Aspasia of Miletus. She was no ordinary woman. Born in a distant Ionian city famed for its cultural vibrancy, Aspasia brought with her a sharp intellect, a captivating presence, and a daring defiance of societal norms that would leave an indelible mark on Athens. Unlike Athenian women, who lived lives confined within the oikos, or household, Aspasia stood apart. She was a metic, a foreigner, unbound by the rigid expectations of Athenian femininity. Her voice was neither silent nor subdued, and in an era where women rarely participated in public discourse, Aspasia not only entered the male-dominated intellectual arena but commanded its attention. She was a philosopher's confidante, a statesman's partner, and, to her detractors, a scandalous anomaly. Aspasia's story begins in Miletus, a thriving city on the coast of Ionia, where she was born into a world teeming with ideas. Miletus was renowned for its thinkers, the birthplace of the first Greek philosophers who dared to question the mysteries of the cosmos and humanity's place within it. In this rich environment, Aspasia honed her mind and sharpened her wit, cultivating the qualities that would make her unforgettable. When Aspasia arrived in Athens, she entered a city at the height of its golden age, ruled by Pericles, a man whose vision transformed Athens into a beacon of art, philosophy, and political innovation. But Athens was also a city of contrasts, a place of enlightened ideals overshadowed by rigid hierarchies. Women were expected to remain invisible, their lives dedicated to domestic duties. Yet, Aspasia defied this reality, stepping boldly into the limelight, where she would ignite admiration, controversy, and love. Her presence in Athens was both a gift and a challenge, a flame that illuminated the city's potential while exposing its hypocrisies. This is the story of Aspasia, the woman who inspired Athens' greatest orator, challenged its most powerful minds, and dared to redefine what it meant to be a woman in a world that sought to silence her. The sun shone brightly over the shimmering waters of the Aegean, casting its golden rays on the bustling port city of Miletus. Here, among the marble temples and vibrant marketplaces, a young girl named Aspasia was born into a world where ideas flowed as freely as the sea winds. Unlike Athens, with its rigid social structures and confining norms, Miletus thrived as a hub of innovation and intellectual inquiry, a place where cultures collided and philosophies flourished. It was in this dynamic environment that Aspasia's extraordinary journey began. From an early age, Aspasia stood out among her peers. Her family, though not of noble lineage, was well respected, and her father ensured she received an education that rivaled that of the boys in her community. In Miletus, this was not unheard of. Unlike Athens, where women were largely excluded from intellectual pursuits, Ionian cities like Miletus offered a more progressive approach. Aspasia learned to read and write, mastering not only the Homeric epics but also the teachings of the early Ionian philosophers, whose revolutionary ideas would shape Western thought for centuries to come. By the time she reached adolescence, Aspasia had developed a keen intellect and an insatiable curiosity. She often wandered the city's streets, marveling at the grandeur of its temples and engaging in lively debates with merchants, travelers, and scholars. The port of Miletus was a crossroads of civilizations, attracting traders and thinkers from across the Mediterranean. Phoenicians, Egyptians, and Persians mingled with Greeks, bringing with them stories, technologies, and ideas that would broaden Aspasia's horizons and ignite her ambition. One of her earliest influences was the philosopher Thales of Miletus, regarded as one of the 7 sages of Greece. Though Thales had passed away long before Aspasia's birth, his legacy loomed large over the city. His teachings, emphasizing rational thought and the pursuit of knowledge, inspired a new generation of thinkers who sought to understand the natural world without relying on myth or superstition. Aspasia often visited the agora, where local philosophers debated Thales' ideas about water as the fundamental substance of the universe or the principles of geometry he had derived from his travels in Egypt. These discussions captivated her young mind, planting the seeds of her lifelong passion for intellectual exploration. Aspasia's education was further enriched by her exposure to the works of other Ionian philosophers, such as Anaximander and Anaximenes, who expanded on Thales' theories. She was particularly fascinated by Anaximander's concept of the apeiron, the infinite or boundless principle that underlies all existence. To Aspasia, this idea seemed to mirror her own boundless potential and the limitless possibilities of the human mind. She began to question the world around her, seeking answers not only in philosophy but also in politics, art, and human nature. Yet, even in Miletus, Aspasia faced challenges. As a young woman, her intellectual pursuits were often met with skepticism or outright dismissal by men who viewed her ambitions as unfeminine. But Aspasia refused to be deterred. She cultivated a sharp wit and a persuasive eloquence that allowed her to hold her own in any debate. Her charm and intelligence soon earned her a reputation as a prodigy, and she became a fixture in the city's intellectual circles. By the time Aspasia reached her early 20s, she had outgrown the confines of her hometown. While Miletus had given her a strong foundation, she yearned for greater opportunities to engage with the world's brightest minds and contribute to the grand tapestry of human achievement. Her decision to leave Miletus was not an easy one, but it was driven by a deep conviction that her destiny lay beyond the shores of her birthplace. Aspasia's journey to Athens marked a turning point in her life. At the time, Athens was the cultural and political epicenter of the Greek world, a city undergoing a profound transformation under the leadership of Pericles. The Athenian Golden Age was in full swing, characterized by groundbreaking advancements in art, architecture, drama, and philosophy. For Aspasia, Athens represented both a challenge and an opportunity, a city where her intellect and ambition could either flourish or be crushed by the weight of its traditions. The journey itself was fraught with peril. Traveling across the Aegean was no small feat, especially for a woman venturing alone. Aspasia's decision to leave Miletus required not only courage but also a calculated understanding of the risks involved. She joined a caravan of merchants heading to Athens, relying on her wit and resourcefulness to navigate the complexities of the journey. Along the way, she encountered individuals from all walks of life: sailors who regaled her with tales of the sea, traders who shared insights into the economies of distant lands, and travelers who spoke of Athens's splendor and contradictions. When Aspasia finally arrived in Athens, she was both awed and disoriented by the city's grandeur. The Acropolis rose majestically above the city, its marble structures gleaming in the sunlight. The agora buzzed with activity, a chaotic blend of commerce and politics where citizens debated matters of state alongside vendors hawking their wares. Yet, beneath the surface of this vibrant democracy lay a rigid social hierarchy that relegated women to the margins of public life. For Aspasia, this was both a stark contrast to the relative freedoms she had enjoyed in Miletus and a formidable obstacle to her aspirations. Despite these challenges, Aspasia was undeterred. She quickly recognized that her status as a metic, a foreigner residing in Athens, granted her a unique position. While she lacked the rights of an Athenian citizen, her outsider status also freed her from some of the societal expectations imposed on Athenian women. Aspasia used this to her advantage, carving out a space for herself in the city's intellectual and social spheres. Aspasia's initial years in Athens were marked by both struggle and triumph. She faced prejudice and isolation, but she also found allies among the city's progressive thinkers and artists. Her home soon became a gathering place for some of Athens's most influential figures, including Socrates, who would later describe her as one of the most brilliant minds he had ever encountered. Aspasia's salon became a hub of intellectual exchange, where ideas flowed as freely as the wine poured during symposia. It was during this time that Aspasia first caught the attention of Pericles, the statesman who would come to define Athens's Golden Age. Their initial meeting was serendipitous, but the connection they formed was immediate and profound. Pericles was captivated by Aspasia's intellect, wit, and unorthodox charm. Unlike the demure and obedient women of Athens, Aspasia challenged him, engaging him in spirited debates and offering perspectives that he had never considered. For Aspasia, Pericles represented an opportunity to influence the course of history. For Pericles, Aspasia was a muse and an equal, a partner who inspired him to think beyond the conventional boundaries of his time. As Aspasia and Pericles grew closer, their relationship began to draw the ire of Athens's conservative factions. Aspasia's intelligence and independence made her a target of envy and suspicion, and her foreign origins only fueled the animosity. She was accused of everything from impiety to political manipulation, with some critics going so far as to blame her for Athens's military conflicts. Yet, through it all, Aspasia remained steadfast, refusing to bow to the pressures of a society that sought to silence her. In these early years, Aspasia laid the groundwork for a legacy that would endure long after her time. Her journey from Miletus to Athens was not merely a geographical relocation, but a transformative odyssey that shaped her into one of the most remarkable women of antiquity. With each challenge she overcame, Aspasia grew more resolute in her belief that intellect and determination could transcend even the most entrenched barriers. The stage was now set for the next chapter of Aspasia's life, a chapter that would see her rise to prominence as both a partner to Pericles and a force in her own right. Athens was a city on the cusp of greatness, and Aspasia was poised to play a pivotal role in its unfolding drama. Little did she know, her influence would extend far beyond the walls of the Acropolis, leaving an indelible mark on the history of Western civilization. The day Aspasia stepped foot in Athens, she was greeted by a cacophony of sounds: the clatter of hooves on cobblestone streets, the lively chatter of merchants peddling wares in the agora, and the melodic hymns echoing from distant temples. The city, the fabled heart of Greek democracy, was unlike anything she had ever seen in Miletus. Yet, for all its grandeur, Athens held a stark reality for Aspasia. She was an outsider, a metic, and a woman in a society that saw both statuses as limiting at best and threatening at worst. Aspasia's first months in Athens were marked by keen observation. She wandered the sprawling city, her eyes absorbing every detail of its culture, politics, and architecture. The towering Parthenon, though still under construction, stood as a symbol of Athenian ambition and pride. The agora, a bustling hub of commerce and debate, became her favorite place to linger, listening to the orators and philosophers who gathered there. Though she could not yet participate openly, Aspasia's sharp mind soaked in the rhythm of Athenian life, preparing her for the role she would one day play. The contrast between Athens and Miletus was stark. While Miletus had offered Aspasia a relatively progressive upbringing, Athens operated under a rigid system of gender roles and expectations. Athenian women were confined to the domestic sphere, their lives centered around the home and family. They were expected to remain unseen and unheard in public, leaving the political and intellectual arenas exclusively to men. Aspasia quickly realized that her education and independence, assets in Miletus, would make her a curiosity and perhaps a threat in Athens. But Aspasia was not one to shy away from challenges, recognizing her outsider status as both a limitation and an opportunity. She resolved to carve out a space for herself in Athenian society. Her wit, charm, and intelligence became her tools, and she wielded them with precision. Slowly, she began to cultivate connections among Athens's intellectual elite, drawing the attention of philosophers, artists, and statesmen who were intrigued by her unconventional background and ideas. One of Aspasia's earliest allies was Anaxagoras, a preeminent philosopher and a mentor to many of Athens's brightest minds. known for his radical ideas about the cosmos and his rejection of traditional Greek mythology. Anaxagoras found in Aspasia a kindred spirit. Their conversations ranged from the nature of the universe to the role of reason in human affairs. And it was through him that Aspasia was introduced to a network of thinkers that would shape her future. Anaxagoras, in turn, recognized Aspasia's potential and encouraged her to pursue her intellectual ambitions despite the societal barriers she faced. Aspasia's home became a salon of sorts, a gathering place for Athens's most brilliant and progressive minds. It was here that she first encountered Socrates, the philosopher whose teachings would later influence Western thought for millennia. Socrates was immediately struck by Aspasia's eloquence and keen intellect. Unlike many of his contemporaries, he admired her not as a novelty but as an equal. In their dialogues, Aspasia challenged Socrates' ideas and offered insights that he would later incorporate into his own philosophy. It was said that Socrates often referred to Aspasia as one of his teachers, a testament to her extraordinary influence. Yet, it was not only philosophers who were drawn to Aspasia. Artists and playwrights, captivated by her beauty and charisma, also frequented her gatherings. The sculptor Phidias, responsible for the great statue of Athena that would adorn the Parthenon, found inspiration in Aspasia's poise and grace. Playwrights like Aristophanes, though critical of her influence in later years, could not ignore her presence in the city's cultural life. Aspasia's ability to move seamlessly between these worlds, philosophy, art, and politics, was a testament to her adaptability and ambition. It was during one of these gatherings that Aspasia met Pericles, the man who would come to define her life as much as she defined his. Their meeting was serendipitous, a chance encounter that would alter the course of Athenian history. Pericles, already a towering figure in Athens, was at the height of his power, leading the city through its golden age. Known for his vision, eloquence, and strategic mind, Pericles was a statesman unmatched in his ability to inspire and unify the Athenian people. But even he was unprepared for the force of nature that was Aspasia. From the moment they met, Pericles was captivated by Aspasia's intellect and wit. Unlike the women he had known, Aspasia was unafraid to challenge him, engaging him in spirited debates on politics, philosophy, and the future of Athens. For Pericles, who had long surrounded himself with sycophants and flatterers, Aspasia's honesty and insight were a revelation. She became not only his lover but also his confidant and advisor, a partner who shared his vision for Athens and helped him refine it. Aspasia's relationship with Pericles was both a blessing and a curse. On the one hand, it elevated her status, giving her access to the inner workings of Athenian politics and culture. On the other hand, it made her a target of envy and suspicion. As a foreigner and a woman, Aspasia was an easy scapegoat for those who opposed Pericles' policies. Critics accused her of wielding undue influence over him, with some even blaming her for instigating wars and political conflicts. Despite these attacks, Aspasia remained steadfast, refusing to retreat into obscurity. One of the most significant controversies surrounding Aspasia during this time was her alleged role in the Samian War. Critics claimed that her personal connections to Miletus had influenced Pericles' decision to support the city against Samos, leading to a costly and protracted conflict. While these accusations were likely exaggerated, they highlighted the extent to which Aspasia's presence in Pericles' life disrupted the traditional power dynamics of Athens. She was not merely a passive consort but an active participant in the city's affairs, a role that many found unsettling. Despite the challenges, Aspasia's influence on Pericles and Athens continued to grow. Her home remained a haven for intellectuals and artists, a place where ideas were exchanged and alliances forged. Through her relationship with Pericles, she became a central figure in the cultural and political life of Athens, shaping the city's golden age in ways that few women or men could claim. Yet, for all her accomplishments, Aspasia was acutely aware of her precarious position. As a medic and a woman, she had no formal power or legal protections. Her status depended entirely on her relationship with Pericles and the goodwill of Athens's elite. It was a delicate balancing act, one that required constant vigilance and unwavering determination. But Aspasia had never been one to shy away from adversity. She embraced her role as an outsider, using it to challenge the norms and expectations of Athenian society. As Aspasia settled into her new life in Athens, she began to lay the foundation for her legacy. Her salon became a beacon of intellectual and cultural activity, attracting the brightest minds of her time. Her relationship with Pericles offered her a platform to influence the city's politics and policies, and her resilience in the face of prejudice and adversity set an example for generations to come. In the years to follow, Aspasia would face even greater challenges and achieve even greater triumphs. But for now, she remained the outsider, a foreign flame burning brightly in the heart of Athens, illuminating the city's potential while exposing its flaws. Her journey had only just begun. The meeting of Pericles and Aspasia was a moment that would reverberate through Athens for decades. It was an encounter that brought together two of the most formidable minds of the age. One, a visionary statesman at the peak of his power, and the other, an outsider whose wit, intellect, and eloquence challenged the conventions of a male-dominated society. Their relationship, born of mutual respect and intellectual curiosity, would transform not only their lives but also the trajectory of Athens itself. Pericles, the so-called first citizen of Athens, was known for his strategic brilliance and his ability to inspire. Under his leadership, Athens had ascended to unprecedented heights, becoming the cultural and political epicenter of the Greek world. Yet, Pericles was a man of contradictions. While he championed democracy, he wielded near-autocratic influence over the Athenian assembly. While he led a city celebrated for its intellectual vibrancy, his personal relationships had been conventional and uninspiring, until he met Aspasia. For Aspasia, Pericles represented a rare opportunity, a man who could see beyond her status as a medic and a woman, and who valued her for her mind and her insight. Their first meeting, arranged through mutual acquaintances in Athens's intellectual circles, was marked by a spirited debate on the nature of governance. Aspasia's arguments were incisive, her perspective shaped by her Ionian upbringing and her exposure to a broader Mediterranean worldview. Pericles, used to dominating discussions, found himself challenged in ways he had never experienced before. It was, by all accounts, an instant and profound connection. Their relationship quickly deepened. For Pericles, Aspasia was more than a companion. She was an advisor, confidant, and a muse, unlike the women of Athens, who were largely excluded from public life. Aspasia engaged fully in the intellectual and political discourse of the city. She critiqued Pericles' policies, offered alternative strategies, and even contributed to his speeches. Some historians suggest that Aspasia's influence extended to the famous funeral oration, one of the most celebrated pieces of rhetoric in Western history. In it, Pericles exalted the values of democracy and the sacrifices of Athenian soldiers, themes that echoed Aspasia's own belief in the power of human potential and collective effort. For Aspasia, her partnership with Pericles offered a platform to amplify her ideas and her voice. While she lacked formal power, her influence over Pericles was undeniable. Their home became a salon where the leading minds of Athens gathered to discuss philosophy, politics, and the arts. Figures like Socrates, Anaxagoras, and Phidias were frequent visitors, drawn not only by Pericles' stature but also by Aspasia's reputation as an intellectual equal. She cultivated an environment where ideas could flourish, where the boundaries of Athenian thought could be pushed ever outward. But their relationship was not without its challenges. From the outset, Aspasia's presence in Pericles' life provoked controversy. To conservative Athenians, she was an interloper, a foreign woman who had ensnared the city's most powerful man. Critics accused her of manipulating Pericles for her own gain, of steering his policies to serve her interests. The comic playwright Aristophanes lampooned her in his works, portraying her as a scheming temptress responsible for Athens's military conflicts. These accusations, while baseless, reflected the deep unease that Aspasia's independence and influence stirred in Athenian society. The most enduring scandal surrounding Aspasia was her alleged role in the Samian War. Miletus, her birthplace, had appealed to Athens for support in a territorial dispute with Samos, a rival city-state. Pericles, swayed by the strategic importance of Miletus and perhaps by Aspasia's connections, launched a military campaign against Samos. The war was brutal and costly, leading to widespread resentment among the Athenian populace. Opponents of Pericles seized on the opportunity to blame Aspasia, accusing her of using her relationship with the statesman to advance her personal agenda. Though these claims were never substantiated, they tarnished Aspasia's reputation and underscored the precariousness of her position. Despite these attacks, Aspasia remained steadfast. She refused to retreat into the shadows, continuing to host gatherings and engage in public discourse. Her resilience in the face of relentless criticism earned her both admiration and enmity. To her supporters, she was a symbol of intellect and defiance, a woman who dared to challenge the norms of her time. To her detractors, she was a dangerous anomaly, a threat to the established order. The partnership between Pericles and Aspasia endured, even as Athens faced mounting challenges. The Peloponnesian War, a protracted conflict with Sparta and its allies, tested the city's resilience and Pericles' leadership. As Athens suffered from plague, economic strain, and political unrest, Pericles turned increasingly to Aspasia for counsel. Her insights, shaped by her outsider perspective and her deep understanding of human nature, provided a counterbalance to the pressures he faced. Yet, the strain took its toll. Pericles' popularity waned, and he became a target for political attacks that sought to exploit his association with Aspasia. When Pericles succumbed to the plague in 429 BCE, Aspasia's world was irrevocably altered. She had lost not only her partner but also her protector and her platform. In the immediate aftermath of his death, Aspasia faced an uncertain future. As a metic, she had no legal claim to Pericles' estate or his legacy. She was, once again, an outsider in a city that had never fully accepted her. Yet, even in this moment of profound loss, Aspasia's resilience shone through. She found a new partner in Lycicles, a democratic leader and a rising figure in Athenian politics. Through her relationship with Lycicles, Aspasia continued to exert influence, albeit in a more subdued capacity. Her ability to adapt to changing circumstances and to rebuild her life in the face of adversity spoke to the strength of her character and the depth of her resolve. The story of Pericles and Aspasia is one of profound partnership, a meeting of minds that transcended the constraints of their time. Together, they shaped Athens's Golden Age, leaving a legacy that would inspire generations to come. Yet, it was Aspasia's ability to endure beyond Pericles' death, to navigate the tumultuous currents of Athenian society, that cemented her place in history. She was not merely a footnote in the life of a great man but a force in her own right, a woman whose intellect and determination left an indelible mark on the world. The rising tensions of the Peloponnesian War cast a long shadow over Athens, and for Aspasia, the political and social climate became increasingly perilous. As the beloved partner of Pericles, she found herself at the center of both admiration and vitriol. The war, which pitted Athens and its Delian League allies against the formidable Spartan alliance, tested the city's resilience and the leadership of Pericles, whose decisions were now scrutinized more harshly than ever. Aspasia, as his confidant and closest companion, was not spared from the fallout. The Peloponnesian War was not Athens's first foray into conflict under Pericles' leadership. Years earlier, the Samian War had proven to be a controversial and costly endeavor. The dispute arose when the city-state of Miletus, Aspasia's birthplace, sought Athenian support in a territorial conflict with Samos. Pericles had led the campaign to intervene on behalf of Miletus, a move that aligned with Athens's imperial ambitions but also ignited accusations of personal bias. Many of Pericles' opponents, seizing on Aspasia's Ionian heritage, suggested that she had manipulated him into the war. Though such claims were likely unfounded, they added fuel to the fire of her critics. Aspasia's role in these events became a focal point for Athenian satire and slander. Aristophanes and other playwrights caricatured her as a scheming femme fatale, wielding undue influence over Pericles. These portrayals, while exaggerated for comedic effect, reflected a broader unease with Aspasia's presence in the public sphere. As a medic and a woman, she embodied a challenge to Athenian norms, and her involvement in Pericles' political decisions only heightened the controversy. The escalation of the Peloponnesian War brought new challenges and tragedies. Athens' strategy under Pericles relied heavily on its naval superiority and the fortification of its city walls. Pericles urged the Athenian populace to abandon their countryside homes and take refuge within the city, trusting in Athens' formidable navy to outlast the Spartan siege. However, this strategy had unintended consequences. The overcrowding within the city walls led to the outbreak of a devastating plague, which claimed thousands of lives, including Pericles' two legitimate sons from his previous marriage. The loss of his sons was a profound blow to Pericles, and it marked a turning point in his leadership. Weighed down by grief and illness, Pericles' once unshakable resolve began to falter. Aspasia, who had stood by him through years of triumph and challenge, now became his anchor in this time of despair. She comforted him as he mourned his family and worked tirelessly to maintain his morale. Despite the strain of the war and the plague, their bond remained strong, a testament to the depth of their partnership. As Pericles' health deteriorated, the political climate in Athens grew increasingly hostile. Opponents of Pericles sought to exploit his weakened state, launching attacks not only against him but also against Aspasia. She was accused of corrupting Athenian morals, of orchestrating political intrigues, and even of impiety. One particularly scurrilous accusation alleged that she had encouraged the defilement of sacred sites, a charge that could have led to her execution. Aspasia's trial for impiety was a moment of intense drama, as her detractors sought to use her as a proxy for their grievances against Pericles. In a display of loyalty and defiance, Pericles personally defended Aspasia in court. His eloquence and the respect he commanded among the Athenian assembly ultimately secured her acquittal. However, the trial underscored the precariousness of Aspasia's position and the lengths to which her enemies were willing to go to undermine her and Pericles. It also highlighted the fragility of Athens itself, a city riven by internal divisions even as it faced existential threats from external foes. The final years of Pericles' life were marked by a mixture of resilience and resignation. Though he continued to lead Athens through the early years of the war, his health steadily declined, and the strain of leadership took its toll. Aspasia remained by his side until the end, providing him with solace and support as he succumbed to the plague in 429 BCE. His death left a void in Athenian politics and in Aspasia's life, marking the end of an era for both the city and its most controversial woman. In the aftermath of Pericles' death, Aspasia faced an uncertain future. Without his protection, she was vulnerable to the whims of Athenian society, which had never fully accepted her. Yet, Aspasia's resilience and resourcefulness once again came to the fore. She found a new partner in Lycicles, a prominent democratic leader, and continued to exert influence in Athenian politics, albeit in a more subdued capacity. Her ability to adapt to the changing tides of fortune was a testament to her strength and determination. The shadow of war and scandal that had defined much of Aspasia's life in Athens did not diminish her legacy. If anything, it underscored her extraordinary ability to navigate the complexities of a society that often sought to marginalize her. Aspasia's intelligence, eloquence, and unwavering resolve allowed her to endure even the harshest trials. leaving an indelible mark on Athens and on history itself. As the Peloponnesian War dragged on, Athens would face further trials and tribulations. But the era of Pericles and Aspasia remained a symbol of the city's golden age. For Aspasia, the war and its attendant scandals were a crucible that tested her character and affirmed her place as one of antiquity's most remarkable figures. Her story was far from over, but the challenges she had faced thus far had already ensured her immortality in the annals of history. Amidst the political turbulence and personal trials that shaped her life in Athens, Aspasia's role as a central figure in the city's intellectual circles became one of her most enduring legacies. Her home continued to serve as a salon for philosophers, artists, and statesmen, a place where ideas flowed as freely as the wine at symposia. Among her many admirers and intellectual sparring partners was none other than Socrates, whose connection with Aspasia would become a symbol of mutual respect and the exchange of ideas in a time of profound societal constraints. For Socrates, Aspasia was both a peer and a teacher. In a city where women's voices were often dismissed or silenced, Aspasia's sharp wit and eloquence stood out as extraordinary. Socrates, known for his relentless questioning and pursuit of truth, found in Aspasia a rare equal. Their conversations were said to be lively, challenging, and deeply philosophical, touching on subjects ranging from the nature of love to the principles of governance. In these exchanges, Aspasia's intellect shone brightly, and she earned the respect of one of history's greatest philosophers. One of the most enduring anecdotes about their relationship involves Socrates' acknowledgement of Aspasia's influence. According to later accounts, Socrates often credited Aspasia with teaching him the art of rhetoric and persuasion. He would reportedly jest that she was the true master behind his method, an attribution that, while likely exaggerated, underscores the high regard in which he held her abilities. This mutual respect defied the norms of Athenian society, where women were rarely seen as intellectual equals to men. Aspasia's reputation as a philosopher's confidante extended beyond Socrates. Her gatherings drew other luminaries of the time, including Anaxagoras, the pre-Socratic thinker who introduced radical ideas about the cosmos and the role of reason. Anaxagoras, like Socrates, valued Aspasia's perspective, and their discussions often delved into the fundamental nature of existence and the workings of the universe. Aspasia's ability to engage with such profound topics was a testament to her intellectual prowess and her refusal to conform to the limitations imposed by her gender and status. While Aspasia's relationships with these philosophers were grounded in mutual admiration and respect, they also served a broader purpose. Her salon became a melting pot of ideas that pushed the boundaries of Athenian thought. The discussions that took place under her roof often influenced the works of those who attended, shaping the philosophical and cultural trajectory of Athens during its golden age. For Aspasia, these gatherings were not just a social activity but a means of contributing to the intellectual vibrancy of the city she had adopted as her home. However, Aspasia's involvement in the intellectual life of Athens was not without its challenges. Her critics, many of whom resented her influence and her relationship with Pericles, sought to undermine her at every turn. She was accused of using her intelligence and charm to manipulate those around her, a charge that revealed more about Athenian anxieties than about Aspasia herself. To the conservative factions of Athens, she was a disruptive force, a woman who dared to step into spaces traditionally reserved for men. Despite these obstacles, Aspasia's resilience and determination allowed her to persevere. She continued to host gatherings, mentor younger thinkers, and engage in the debates that defined her era. Her legacy as a philosopher's friend and intellectual leader was further cemented by her association with Socrates, who would go on to shape Western philosophy in ways that are still felt today. While Socrates' own teachings often overshadowed those of his contemporaries, the influence of figures like Aspasia remains a vital part of the story of Athenian thought. Aspasia's connection to philosophy also extended to her views on society and governance. She was a proponent of reason and dialogue, values that she believed were essential to the functioning of a healthy democracy. Through her interactions with Athens's leading minds, she championed the idea that intellectual inquiry and debate were not merely academic pursuits but vital components of civic life. In this sense, Aspasia's contributions went beyond the confines of her salon. They were woven into the fabric of Athenian democracy itself. One of the most remarkable aspects of Aspasia's intellectual life was her ability to bridge divides. As a medic and a woman, she occupied a unique position in Athenian society, one that allowed her to see the city's strengths and weaknesses from an outsider's perspective. This dual vantage point enabled her to offer insights that were both critical and constructive, challenging Athens to live up to its ideals while acknowledging its flaws. Her philosophical engagements were thus not only personal achievements but also acts of civic service, contributing to the broader discourse that defined her time. As the years passed, Aspasia's influence continued to grow, even as Athens grappled with the challenges of war and political instability. Her salon remained a beacon of intellectual vitality. Her role as a philosopher's friend and a patron of ideas ensured that her legacy would endure long after her time in Athens had come to an end. In the minds of those who knew her, Aspasia was not just a participant in the intellectual life of the city but a driving force behind it. A woman whose brilliance and courage left an indelible mark on history. For Aspasia, the world of philosophy was not an escape from the difficulties of her life but a means of confronting them head-on. Through her dialogues with Socrates and others, she explored the fundamental questions of existence, justice, and human potential, finding in these discussions both solace and strength. Her friendship with the philosophers of Athens was more than a meeting of minds. It was a testament to the power of ideas to transcend barriers and transform lives. In this, Aspasia's story remains as relevant today as it was in the age of Pericles and Socrates. The Golden Age of Athens was not destined to last forever. As the Peloponnesian War dragged on, its impact rippled through every corner of the city, eroding the foundations of Athenian society and testing its leaders like never before. For Aspasia, the war brought profound personal and political challenges, culminating in the loss of her partner and protector, Pericles. The years leading to his death marked a turning point in both her life and the city's history, as the optimism of their shared vision gave way to despair and uncertainty. The Peloponnesian War had begun with Pericles' strategy of maritime dominance and defensive fortifications. His plan relied on Athens' naval superiority and the city's ability to outlast Sparta's offensives by retreating behind the long walls. While the strategy initially appeared sound, it placed immense pressure on the population, who were forced to abandon their rural homes and crowd into the city. The overcrowding quickly led to unsanitary conditions, and within the first few years of the war, a devastating plague swept through Athens. The plague, which historians now believe may have been typhus or smallpox, claimed thousands of lives, including many prominent citizens. It struck indiscriminately, killing rich and poor, soldiers and civilians alike. The disease decimated Athens' population, weakened its military, and shattered the morale of its people. For Pericles, the losses were both political and personal. His leadership came under fire as critics accused him of failing to foresee the consequences of his strategy. Worse, the plague took the lives of his two legitimate sons, Perillus and Xanthippus, plunging him into a deep state of mourning. Aspasia's role during this period was pivotal yet often overlooked by history. As Pericles grappled with grief and illness, she became his emotional anchor and confidant. Her resilience and composure provided him with a measure of stability amid the chaos. Despite her own vulnerability as a medic and a woman, Aspasia remained a steadfast presence in his life, offering him solace and counsel as he struggled to lead Athens through its darkest hour. But the political climate in Athens was unforgiving. Pericles, once celebrated as the architect of Athens' Golden Age, now faced growing opposition from rivals who sought to exploit the city's suffering for their own gain. Aspasia, too, became a target of renewed attacks. Critics accused her of wielding undue influence over Pericles, with some even blaming her for the war and the plague. These accusations, while baseless, reflected the deep divisions within Athenian society and the scapegoating that often accompanies times of crisis. In the final months of his life, Pericles' health began to deteriorate, weakened by the plague and the relentless pressures of leadership. He withdrew from public life, spending his remaining days in the company of Aspasia and a small circle of trusted allies. During this time, Aspasia's care for Pericles was both a testament to her devotion and a reflection of their unique partnership. Unlike most relationships of their time, theirs had always been one of intellectual and emotional equality, a bond that endured even as the world around them crumbled. When Pericles succumbed to the plague in 429 BCE, Athens lost not only its greatest leader but also its unifying force. His death marked the end of an era, leaving the city adrift in a sea of uncertainty. For Aspasia, the loss was both deeply personal and profoundly destabilizing. Without Pericles, she was left to navigate a society that had never fully accepted her and a political landscape that had grown increasingly hostile. In the immediate aftermath of Pericles' death, Aspasia faced significant challenges. As a metic, she had no legal rights to Pericles' estate or his political legacy. Her status, once protected by her relationship with Athens' most powerful man, was now precarious. Yet, Aspasia's resourcefulness and resilience once again came to the fore. Refusing to retreat into obscurity, she sought to rebuild her life and maintain her influence in Athenian society. One of the most remarkable aspects of Aspasia's Post-Pericles life was her relationship with Lycicles, a prominent democratic leader and general. Although details of their partnership are scarce, it is believed that Aspasia played a role in advising Lycicles, much as she had with Pericles. Through her association with him, Aspasia continued to exert influence in Athens, albeit in a more subdued capacity. This ability to adapt to changing circumstances and align herself with new allies speaks to her extraordinary political acumen and her determination to remain a force in the city's affairs. However, Athens itself was in decline. The war dragged on for decades, sapping the city's resources and fracturing its unity. The idealism of the Periclean era gave way to a more cynical and fractious political climate, one in which Aspasia's presence was increasingly seen as an anachronism. Yet, even in this diminished Athens, her legacy endured. Her contributions to the city's intellectual and cultural life, her role as a partner to its greatest leader, and her defiance of societal norms all left an indelible mark on its history. Aspasia's resilience in the face of loss and adversity is one of the defining aspects of her story. While Pericles' death marked the end of an era, it did not mark the end of Aspasia's influence or her ability to inspire those around her. She remained a symbol of intellect and determination, a reminder of what Athens had once been and what it could aspire to be again. For Aspasia, the fall of Pericles was not the end of her journey but the beginning of a new chapter, one in which her strength and ingenuity would once again be tested and proven. The death of Pericles marked the end of a golden age, not only for Athens but also for Aspasia. Yet, as the years unfolded, she proved that her story was far from over. Without the towering figure of Pericles at her side, Aspasia navigated a world that had grown increasingly uncertain and unforgiving. It was a testament to her adaptability, intelligence, and indomitable spirit that she continued to influence the city's cultural and political life, even as Athens descended into deeper turmoil. Following Pericles' death, Aspasia's relationship with Lycicles, a prominent general and democratic leader, offered her a renewed foothold in Athenian society. While Lycicles lacked Pericles' towering stature, he shared a commitment to the democratic ideals that had defined the earlier years of Aspasia's life in Athens. Their partnership was a practical alliance, one that allowed Aspasia to remain engaged with the city's politics and to contribute her insights to its governance. Lycicles, it is said, benefited greatly from her counsel, particularly in navigating the complex dynamics of Athens' democratic institutions. Aspasia's influence during this period was quieter but no less impactful. She continued to host gatherings at her home, which remained a hub for intellectual and political discourse. Despite the city's growing divisions and the ongoing strains of the Peloponnesian War, Aspasia's salon persisted as a space where ideas flourished. Philosophers, artists, and statesmen continued to seek her perspective, drawn by her sharp mind and her ability to distill complex issues into actionable insights. However, the Athens that Aspasia had helped to shape was changing. The war dragged on, sapping the city's resources and fracturing its unity. The idealism of the Periclean era gave way to a more pragmatic and often ruthless political landscape. Aspasia's position as a medic and a woman, once a source of intrigue and admiration, now left her increasingly vulnerable. While she remained respected in certain circles, the societal constraints that had always defined her life in Athens grew more pronounced. Aspasia's later years were also marked by her role as a teacher and mentor. She took on a more active role in shaping the next generation of thinkers and leaders, offering guidance and wisdom drawn from her decades of experience. Her ability to connect with younger minds ensured that her influence extended beyond her immediate circle, leaving a lasting imprint on Athenian intellectual life. Even as her public visibility waned, her legacy as a thinker and advisor endured. The exact circumstances of Aspasia's final years remain shrouded in mystery. Historical records offer little detail about her life after the death of Lycicles, and it is unclear whether she remained in Athens or sought refuge elsewhere. What is certain, however, is that her legacy was already firmly established. Aspasia's contributions to Athens, as a partner to Pericles, a philosopher's confidant, and a cultural luminary, had woven her story into the fabric of the city's history. Aspasia's influence also extended beyond her immediate context. In the centuries that followed, her story became a symbol of the possibilities and limitations faced by women in the ancient world. Philosophers and historians alike reflected on her life, often with a mixture of admiration and ambivalence. To some, she was an embodiment of intellect and defiance, a woman who had transcended the constraints of her time. To others, she remained a controversial figure, her independence and influence viewed through the lens of suspicion and bias. Yet, for all the debate surrounding her legacy, Aspasia's story endures as a testament to the power of ideas and the resilience of the human spirit. She lived at the intersection of history's most transformative moments, shaping and being shaped by the events around her. Her intellect, wit, and courage allowed her to leave an indelible mark on Athens. Even in the face of prejudice and adversity, the city she loved, with its towering acropolis, its bustling agora, and its endless debates, was no longer the same by the time of her passing. The Peloponnesian War had fractured Athens, leaving it a shadow of its former self. Yet, the ideals that Aspasia had championed, dialogue, reason, and the pursuit of knowledge, remained central to its identity. In this way, her spirit lived on, not only in the city's monuments but also in the minds of those who carried forward her vision. Aspasia's legacy transcends the confines of her time. She was more than a partner to Pericles or a figure in the Athenian Golden Age. She was a woman who dared to think, speak, and act in a world that sought to silence her. Her story is a reminder that the most enduring legacies are not built on titles or wealth, but on the courage to challenge conventions and the determination to leave the world better than one found it. For Aspasia, that legacy is eternal. Aspasia's story ends as it began, with a woman whose intellect, courage, and resilience defied the constraints of her time. Though her final years remain largely unrecorded, her life had already achieved a kind of immortality, woven into the fabric of Athens and into the legacy of the Western world. As Athens reeled from the protracted devastation of the Peloponnesian War, the ideals that Aspasia had championed, reason, dialogue, and the pursuit of beauty and knowledge, seemed increasingly distant. Yet, Even in a city scarred by loss and betrayal, her contributions endured. The philosophers she had influenced continued their work, their thoughts echoing through time. The political and cultural structures she had helped shape would inspire later generations, providing a model for intellectual and artistic achievement. Aspasia's name lived on in the works of those who came after her. Philosophers like Plato referenced her in their dialogues, often attributing to her the qualities of wisdom and eloquence that had captivated the greatest minds of her time. Historians debated her role in Pericles' policies, some portraying her as a manipulative outsider, others as a visionary whose insights strengthened the Athenian state. Regardless of these varied perspectives, one truth was undeniable. Aspasia had been a central figure in one of history's most dynamic eras. The enduring fascination with Aspasia lies not only in her association with Pericles, but in her ability to transcend the limitations imposed on her by society. As a medic and a woman, she occupied a space outside the traditional power structures of Athens. Yet she used this position to her advantage. Her salon became a crucible of ideas, her voice a beacon for those who sought to challenge orthodoxy and expand the boundaries of knowledge. In reflecting on Aspasia's life, it is impossible to separate her personal journey from the broader context of Athenian history. She lived during a time of extraordinary transformation, when the city was at the height of its power and creativity but also on the brink of collapse. Her story captures the paradoxes of this era, its brilliance and fragility, its aspirations and failures. Aspasia's influence reached far beyond the confines of Athens. Her life serves as a reminder that the most profound legacies are often forged by those who refuse to conform, who dare to question and to imagine a better world. In her defiance of societal norms, in her pursuit of intellectual excellence, and in her unwavering support of those around her, Aspasia embodied the values that defined the Athenian Golden Age at its best. As centuries passed, Aspasia became a symbol, her story evolving with each retelling. To some, she represented the power of intellect and reason. To others, she was a cautionary tale about the dangers of ambition. Yet, through it all, she remained a figure of enduring intrigue, a testament to the complexity of human history and the ways in which individuals can shape the world around them. Today, Aspasia's legacy continues to inspire. She reminds us that greatness is not confined to titles or positions of power, but is found in the courage to think deeply, to act boldly, and to challenge the status quo. Her life, though rooted in a specific time and place, speaks to universal themes of resilience, innovation, and the pursuit of truth. In the ruins of Athens, where the echoes of her era still linger, Aspasia's spirit endures, can be felt in the Acropolis, in the streets of the Agora, and in the timeless words of the philosophers she influenced. It is a spirit that refuses to be silenced, a flame that continues to burn brightly in the annals of history. Aspasia's journey is more than a story of survival. It is a story of triumph. Against all odds, she carved out a place for herself in a world that sought to exclude her. She left behind a legacy that transcends her own time, reminding us that the power of ideas, the courage to speak, and the determination to endure can shape the course of history. For Aspasia, the flame she kindled in Athens remains eternal, a beacon for all who dare to dream beyond their circumstances.